Hi, my name's Eldon. I'm 78, and last fall, my son told me I was just dead weight in his life. He locked the thermostat, rerouted my pension to pay his mortgage, and said I owed him that much for raising his own kids. I stayed quiet at first. I thought silence meant survival, but silence only helped them erase me faster. They forged my name, froze my meds, told the neighbor I died 2 years ago. And the worst part, it wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing I'd been fading long before they pushed. What would you do if your own child treated your existence like a burden? Would you keep hoping? Or would you finally walk out with nothing, just to find yourself again? The floor was cold beneath my heels as I stepped out of bed, the kind of cold that made your bones ache before your feet even touched the ground. I shuffled across the attic floor, wrapped my robe tighter, and glanced at the small electric heater tucked in the corner. It blinked red, locked again. I tried the thermostat app on my phone. Nothing. The password had been changed. Again. I stood still for a moment, watching the numbers flicker, like the house was reminding me it wasn't mine. I didn't belong, not fully, not anymore. Downstairs, I could hear the familiar rhythm of spoons clinking against ceramic, Janine's voice drifting through the vents. She always talked loud enough for me to hear, even when she pretended I wasn't there. I took my time washing up, giving the morning a moment to soften. Maybe today would be different. Maybe Randall would smile. Maybe the heater was just a glitch. Maybe I was just overthinking again. When I reached the kitchen, Randall was scrolling on his phone, Janine sipping her coffee, lips pursed like always. Silas looked up and greeted me, genuine warmth in his voice. "Morning, Grandpa." "Morning," I muttered, taking the chair near the back door, the coldest one, like always. Janine didn't look up. She just reached for a napkin and said, "Oh, the heater's on again. That's why our bill's climbing." No one responded. Randall didn't even glance up. My fingers curled around the mug, and for a second, I thought I might say something, but the silence felt safer. I just sat there, letting the heat of the coffee chase the chill in my hands. Later that morning, after everyone had left the kitchen, I went to order my vitamins, same brand I've been using for years. I added them to the cart, clicked checkout, and got declined. Not once, but 3 times. I double-checked my account, thinking maybe the pension was delayed. It wasn't. The payment had gone through last week, but there, in the transaction history, was a purchase I didn't make, a $246 charge to a store I'd never heard of. The name on the digital receipt, Randall Koenig. I remembered the day he offered to help me modernize my banking. "You don't need all these passwords," he said. "Let me streamline it for you." I had nodded, thankful, stupid. I closed the laptop and sat still, trying not to let the betrayal settle in too deep. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I just filed it away with the others. Breakfast cleanup was always quiet, but that day it had a different edge. I was rinsing my plate when Randall leaned against the counter behind me and said, too casually, "Honestly, sometimes it feels like you're just dead weight here." The room went silent, not a dramatic kind of silence, just final. Janine kept wiping the counter, like the comment didn't need acknowledgement. Silas froze in place, mid-step, holding a glass of orange juice like it had suddenly become too heavy. I didn't flinch. I placed my mug in the sink, turned, and climbed the stairs without a word. Back in the attic, I sat on the edge of the bed, the photo of Elizabeth on the dresser catching the corner of my eye. I picked it up, traced the frame. "Maybe I shouldn't have come here," I whispered. Her smile didn't change. It never did. But I heard her voice in my mind anyway, gentle, firm. You came because you hoped, not because you owed them. I sat for a long time. The cold didn't bother me anymore. The quiet, though, it rang louder than anything. That kind of disrespect doesn't come all at once. It comes in layers. A forgotten greeting, a changed password, a comment left dangling in the air like an empty coat hook. Night fell quietly. I didn't go down for dinner. I didn't want another bite of silence served with forced smiles. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling fan that didn't spin. The bulb above it flickered once and settled into darkness. I heard the stairs creak, soft footsteps. Silas knocked gently, then opened the door a crack. "Grandpa," he whispered. I didn't move. "You're not dead weight. You never were." He lingered for a moment, then left, pulling the door shut behind him. I opened my eyes. The tears didn't fall, they just sat there, quietly burning. I looked over at the nightstand, the thermostat remote, next to it, the notebook I hadn't touched in years. I reached for the pen. The next morning, I came down the stairs a little later than usual. I knew what kind of silence waited for me. It was the kind that isn't accidental, the kind people build deliberately to suffocate someone without ever raising their voices. Janine was already at the table, cutting through her toast like it had wronged her. She didn't look up. Randall sat beside her, phone in one hand, fork in the other. Silas gave me a small nod and a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. I sat down slowly, hoping maybe the quiet would pass. But Randall spoke, just loud enough for everyone to hear. "This parasite lifestyle is what kills legacy." My hand froze mid-reach for the butter knife. The fork slipped from my fingers and hit the plate with a sharp clatter. No one flinched. Janine kept chewing. Randall didn't glance up. Silas's face twisted in something between guilt and apology. I didn't say a word. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew anything I said would be twisted, clipped, or ignored. I finished my coffee, my throat dry, and left my toast untouched. Instead of going back to the attic, I stepped outside into the backyard. The morning air bit through my shirt, but I stayed. The grass hadn't been cut in weeks. Weeds had claimed the corners. The grill I'd bought for Randall's last birthday stood unopened, still in its box beside the shed. He said he'd use it for family cookouts. That was 3 summers ago. I leaned against the railing and looked toward the horizon, not really seeing anything. The word parasite echoed, repeating in my head, not shouted, just dropped there, casual, like a label on an expired carton of milk, not needed anymore. I'd worked 42 years, 30 of those running my own business, paid off a mortgage, buried a wife, raised a son, and now, in my own son's home, I'd been demoted to a burden. That evening, after a long day of hearing nothing but creaking floors and distant television, there was a soft knock at my door. Silas stood there, hands in his hoodie pocket, his face unsure. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Some truths don't need to be said," I told him, "but when they are, they echo." He looked down at his shoes. "I think Dad says them to hide from himself." That made me pause. I looked at the boy, no, the man standing in front of me. He saw more than he let on. Maybe he always had. Silas sat beside me on the edge of the bed, not asking more questions, not offering forced comfort, just present. And for that, I was thankful. After he left, I turned to the photo of Elizabeth. She was still smiling in that way she always did when she was just about to say something wise. I could almost hear her voice again, steady, no nonsense. Don't let them reduce you to background noise. I stared at her picture a long while. The attic was quiet, save for the hum of the ceiling fan above. I remembered when I moved in here, how Randall had said it was temporary. Funny how temporary starts to feel permanent when nobody checks in. I reached for my notebook, the one I'd pulled out the night before. I flipped to a clean page and wrote the date. Then, under it, one line. Parasite lifestyle, Randall. Breakfast. 7:42 a.m. I started a list. Every comment, every decision made without me, every glance that cut deeper than a word. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about keeping score. It was about clarity, about not letting myself forget. I wrote until my hand ached. When I finished, I closed the notebook gently, like sealing a wound that still stung. Then I placed it back in the drawer under my shirts. Late that night, just as I was dozing off, I heard voices downstairs. They weren't yelling, but they weren't whispering either. I recognized Janine's sharp tone first. "He'll crack eventually," she said. "Just keep the pressure," Randall replied, low and steady. "If he doesn't, I'll make sure the bank calls him directly." I didn't move, I didn't react, but inside, something shifted. I reached over, opened the drawer again, and held the notebook in my lap. Let's see who really depends on whom. That message from the bank wasn't just a warning, it was my permission to act. I lay awake for hours after, notebook still warm from my touch, my mind flickering through memories like someone scanning old photographs too quickly to smile at any of them. At 2 a.m, I gave up pretending to sleep and sat up. The attic was cold, and my joints protested, but I moved with purpose. I flipped open the notebook to last night's page, rereading the line, "He'll crack eventually." I added a timestamp beside it, then turned to a clean sheet. Before I could write, I noticed a thick envelope poking out of the old metal box Randall had once told me to store my important mail in. I pulled it out. The front was labeled in Randall's handwriting, signed "Keep for Records." My name scribbled along the bottom. I hadn't remembered signing anything labeled that. But when you're asked to sign something while the TV blares and someone's asking about dinner plans, you don't always question it. I peeled it open. Inside was a copy of a legal document granting Randall power of attorney. My signature sat neat and clear, dated a month ago. No explanation, no second signature, no conversation since, just done. I remembered that day now. Randall said it was an address update for my bank mail. He even joked, "You know how these places get, they need 1,000,000 forms just to forward one letter." I had laughed, pen in hand, and he had smiled. Now, the betrayal wasn't loud. It was quiet, surgical. The kind that doesn't aim to break your bones, just quietly remove your name from your own life. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. I felt the numbness of clarity. By the time sunlight touched the attic walls, I was dressed and standing in the yard with a cup of coffee, trying to convince myself the morning would feel different. Across the fence, Beverly was out watering her petunias. She caught sight of me, did a double take, then smiled warmly. "Well, look at you. Randall told us you passed." "What?" "2 years ago." She laughed lightly. "Good thing I don't believe half of what men say." I managed a polite chuckle, waved, and backed toward the door. My heart didn't race. It pulsed slowly, like it was waiting for my head to catch up. Dead. That's what he told them. Inside, Janine was setting out cereal bowls like nothing had shifted in the universe. Randall was already in his seat, going over papers. I sat down. No one looked up. "We need his pension by Thursday," Randall muttered, scanning a bill. Janine added sugar to her coffee. Silas didn't touch his food. His eyes moved from one face to another like he was trying to connect dots that only I could see. I didn't speak. I didn't flinch. I just watched them move around me like I was the houseplant no one wanted to throw out, but no one watered either. Upstairs again. I turned the page in the notebook. I wrote Beverly's words in quotes, underlining them twice. Randall said you passed? 2 years ago. I sat with that sentence for a long time. It's not only that they're using me. I wrote, they've buried me alive. Then I started a new list, not of insults, but of outcomes, realistic ones. A column for stay, another for walk out. Under the second column, I started writing possible dates, cities, the names of people I hadn't called in years. I stared at my suitcase in the corner. It hadn't moved in 6 months. I didn't move either. Not yet. That evening, as dinner passed in that familiar silent theater, I barely touched my food. My phone buzzed once. I checked it under the table. A message from my bank. Online access for your account was updated last month. I slowly placed the phone down. When I looked up, Randall was staring at me, then quickly looked away. My jaw clenched. My fingers tapped the edge of the plate once, then again. Randall said nothing, but there was a flicker of something, nervousness, guilt, I couldn't tell. I stood, pushed my chair back without a sound, and walked to the stairs. At the landing, I paused. If they want me dead, I whispered, they'll see what ghosts can do. It was midweek when the nurse came again. Darla, always on time, always with that warm, professional smile, stepped in with her bag slung over one shoulder and a clipboard tucked under her arm. The moment she crossed the threshold, Janine transformed, sweet, helpful, her voice laced with a false brightness. She even brought out lemon water. Mr. Reese is just in the sunroom, Janine chirped, as if I were a houseplant that needed watering. Darla sat across from me, her eyes scanning not just my face, but everything behind it. She didn't comment on the deepening circles under my eyes or the weight I'd lost, but I saw the flicker. She noticed. I shifted in my chair, not from pain, but from knowing. Randall didn't show his face. Janine hovered near the doorway until Darla gently suggested they speak privately. We moved into the hallway near the back stairwell. Darla didn't ask for permission. She simply said, I need to say something. Eldon. I nodded. I'm not trying to interfere, she began, voice low. But you might want to think about other living arrangements. I didn't speak right away. She waited. Why I asked finally. She looked at me carefully, her next words precise. Because concern and control don't always mean the same thing. And this house, it feels dangerous. We held that truth between us in the stillness. Then she handed me a printout of a general clinic number, no pressure, just tucked it in my palm like a quiet lifeline and went back to her cheerful goodbye. Later that day, I took a walk, just to breathe, just to remind myself of my own legs. On my way back, I stopped by the pharmacy to refill my blood pressure medication. The man behind the counter typed something in, frowned, then said, I'm sorry, sir. Looks like the insurance denied it. I blinked. That's not possible. He pointed to the screen. It was flagged last week. You might want to call? Back at the house? I stepped into the kitchen holding the white pharmacy bag empty. Janine was slicing vegetables. They rejected my prescription. I said, she didn't look up. It's too expensive. You don't need it daily anyway. Her tone was matter of fact, like she was explaining a recipe. She sprinkled salt over cucumbers and moved on. I stood there, holding the paper, realizing just how carefully they'd measured every insult, small enough to dismiss, big enough to hurt. That evening, I began packing. I didn't make noise. I folded clothes quietly, organized my IDs, and slid my notebook between 2 shirts. I didn't need everything, just what was mine. Silas entered, caught off guard by the open suitcase. I'm just tidying up, I said, without turning. He nodded, lingered in the doorway for a moment, then stepped away. No questions. Later that night, Randall came home, his voice filling the house before his footsteps did. "This electric bill is absurd. We wouldn't be behind if Dad didn't use the heater like it's winter in Alaska." I walked into the kitchen calmly, met his eyes. "I think we need to talk." "Randall." He waved me off. "Not now." I didn't insist. I didn't argue. "Then don't say I didn't warn you." I left him with that. Silence filled the room. Hours later, as I settled back in bed, my phone buzzed. "Due to insurance changes, we're postponing your appointments." The clinic texted. I stared at the screen, then at the ceiling. A soft knock followed. Silas again. His voice hushed. "Dad's been calling the insurance provider. In your name." I exhaled slowly. "Then I'll call someone else." I said, "In my name." The kitchen was quiet. Too quiet. I'd gotten used to that silence, the kind that settled not from peace but avoidance. Randall was already pacing downstairs, socked feet dragging across the tile, his phone clenched in one hand. I could hear his muffled voice through the floorboards. Short phrases like, "Need this done," and "I'm not waiting till next month." Janine's toaster beeped. Then the smell of something acrid filled the house. Burnt toast again. It was always toast when she was rattled. I sat on the edge of my bed, watching a line of light split across the floorboards, and opened the notebook. I flipped through the entries, the one from Beverly's comment, the list of withdrawn medications, and now the call from the clinic. Each line was a tally of erosion, tiny, unspoken, but chiseling. I reread the quote I'd scribbled last night. "Then I'll call someone else in my name." It no longer felt like a whisper. It felt like the beginning of a voice. Downstairs. I took a seat at the breakfast table like I always did. Silas looked up from his cereal. Janine placed a mug near my hand without looking at me. Randall didn't bother with pleasantries. "We're tired of guessing," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. "We need your pension, Dad. All of it. Every month." The sentence landed in the room like a metal pipe dropped on tile. Janine folded her arms, her tone clipped. "It's not just about you anymore. We have responsibilities." Silas sat perfectly still. I stirred my coffee once, then asked, "So, this is the price of being sheltered?" Randall leaned in. "It's the price of being useful." I pushed my plate away, slowly. The eggs had gone cold. "Then consider me no longer useful." Janine scoffed. "Don't be dramatic." "Eldon." But I wasn't. I stood without haste and walked out of the room. I left behind breakfast. I didn't leave my pride. Upstairs. I opened the closet. I hadn't touched the overnight bag in months. Now I laid it on the bed and began folding clothes. 2 shirts, 1 sweater, socks, underwear. Enough. Silas appeared in the doorway, his voice tentative. "Are you leaving?" "I'm not staying under those terms." He watched as I picked up the framed photo of Elizabeth. I held it for a moment before wrapping it in a t-shirt and laying it on top of the clothes. It didn't feel like packing. It felt like reclaiming space in a life that had tried to evict me. I zipped the bag slowly. Randall stormed in before I'd lifted it. "You're really doing this?" "Walking out." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I'm walking back to myself." He laughed, but it was dry. "Fine. Don't expect to come back when things go south." I turned, meeting his eyes without flinching. "I won't, but you might." I walked past him. He didn't move. I reached the front door. Silas followed, barefoot on wood. I paused as I opened it. He stood at the threshold, unsure. "Grandpa." "Wait, can I visit you?" I turned. His eyes weren't begging. They were honest. "Only if you visit because you want to." Not because someone sends you. And then I stepped out, pulling the door gently shut behind me. I didn't slam it. I didn't look back. But I heard the echo of every word ever spoken in that house that tried to shrink me. And for once, I didn't carry it with me. The first night alone was quiet. Quiet in the way that felt earned, not imposed. I woke before dawn on a threadbare couch in a garage apartment above Jim Harwell's old auto shop, where he used to keep his spare tires and broken radios. The ceiling fan creaked above, moving just enough to push air without purpose. The air smelled of oil and rubber, but there was no bitterness in it, only honesty. I sat up slowly, joints reminding me I hadn't slept on something this firm in years. But this wasn't Randall's attic. This was mine, if only for a while. I reached for the notebook and opened it to a blank page. With a steady pen, I wrote 3 words out, not broken. By mid-morning, I was walking into town. The sidewalks were uneven, cracked by frost and time. The bank was just 4 blocks away, a squat building with faded blue awnings. Clive Densmore, the account manager, still had the same salt and pepper mustache and that same faint suspicion in his eyes that he wore like cologne. "How can I help you today?" "Mr. Reese," he asked, tapping the keyboard. "I need to cancel a transfer," I said. His fingers paused. "It's linked to Randall Koenig's mortgage," I added. He looked up. "That's been on file for almost 2 years. I know. It's time I paid for my life, not his." There was a moment of silence between us. Then he nodded and turned back to the screen. "It'll take a signature," he said. I signed without hesitation. The pen didn't shake. Back at the apartment, I checked the mailbox. A single letter was tucked inside, forwarded from the old house. The handwriting was careful. I opened it with a butter knife from the kitchenette drawer and unfolded the paper. It was from Miriam Coates Randall's ex-wife. "You were the only one who stood up for me," she wrote. "The only one who saw through it." Enclosed was a check for $100. In the corner she'd written, "Not much, but I owe you." I read the letter 3 times before placing it on the counter. Then I cried. Not for the money, not even for the gesture, but because for the first time in a long time, someone remembered me rightly. That evening, Silas arrived with a sandwich bag in one hand and a small cardboard box in the other. "I figured you could use dinner," he said, lifting the sandwiches onto the counter. "And the car needs new spark plugs anyway." We sat on old crates turned sideways like bar stools, eating ham and mustard on wheat bread. He looked around the small space, eyes lingering on the notebook I'd left open on the shelf. "Do you think people change?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "either through loss or through truth." He raised his cup of tap water, and I raised mine. "To both," he said. "To both," I echoed. After he left, I opened the notebook again. I started a new list. Step 1, regain control of pension, done. Step 2, protect Silas from retaliation, in progress. Step 3, rewrite will, soon. Below that, I added, this time, the paper will speak before I have to. I was sealing the notebook shut when my phone buzzed. Voicemail. I pressed play. Janine's voice came through, brittle as dry leaves. "You've put Randall in a terrible spot. The bank is calling us. Fix this." I listened to the whole thing, then calmly deleted it. I whispered to myself, "I just did." By the time I poured my second cup of coffee, I'd already missed 5 calls from Randall. His voicemails came in waves first. A trembling dad, "Let's just talk," then rising to, "You're screwing everything up," and finally, a venomous, "This is betrayal." I sat at the small table, the kind that wobbled if you leaned too far forward, and opened my notebook. I reread yesterday's entry and scribbled beneath it, "They needed me until I said no." My phone buzzed again. A new text from Janine. "You're destroying your son's life." I didn't reply, but I did press play on the next voicemail. Randall's voice, cold and rehearsed. "If you don't resume the pension transfers, I'll file for elder abandonment. You'll lose what little you have left." My jaw clenched. The mug in my hand no longer felt warm. I called Silas. He answered on the second ring. His voice hushed. "Hey, Grandpa, are you okay?" He exhaled. "Mom's been screaming. Dad's saying you stole from them. They're saying they'll sue. Did you believe them?" "No, but I'm scared." I let the silence sit. "Want to meet me at the park?" I asked. "By the duck pond." We met an hour later. The bench still had initials carved into the wood from high school kids who thought love could be etched in oak. Silas sat beside me, knees bouncing. "You're not responsible for their mess," I said. "They said I can't see you unless I delete your number." I reached into my coat pocket and handed him a small folded paper. My P.O. box. Some things worth keeping are better written down. He nodded but didn't speak. A duck quacked in the distance, the only sound cutting through the winter quiet. Back at the apartment that evening, Silas showed me something on his phone, a screenshot. Janine's Facebook post. We tried to care for him. He left us. Comments trickled below. "So sorry for what you're going through. Some people can't be helped. Praying for peace." I scrolled without emotion. People always decorate neglect with nice filters. I said, another buzz. This time from Randall. "If you won't help," the message read, "repay everything we spent on you." I walked to the desk, sat down, and pulled out a blank sheet. I began drafting a formal response. Not a rant, not a plea, just a few sentences. "I'll repay what I owe in dignity, not dollars." As night settled, I placed the letter in an envelope, sealed it, and left it on the corner of the desk. The phone buzzed again. Silas. His voice came through barely above a whisper. "They cut my tuition payments. Said, if I want you, I can pay for college myself." I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. My breath slowed. "Then maybe," I said quietly, "it's time we both learn how to build something on our own." The sun slipped behind the rooftops in a slow retreat as I watched Marion from the porch window. She moved like someone hosting a dignitary checking the roast twice, wiping the same spot on the counter 3 times. The table was set with silverware I hadn't seen in years, and cloth napkins folded like hotel fans. Ethan came downstairs in a blazer, adjusting his cufflinks, no tie, but too formal for family. Something was off. Dinner at their house had always carried a soft edge. Politeness folded around, tension like gravy over dry turkey. But tonight, it was sharper calculated. Even the music playing in the background, some instrumental jazz, felt rehearsed. When I sat down, I noticed my plate was set slightly askew, not quite in line with the others. A small detail, but it echoed. A signal. Mid-meal. After Marion passed the rolls with an overly bright smile, Ethan cleared his throat. "We've been talking," he said, laying a folder beside his plate, "about a new family budget plan." I didn't reach for the folder. He went on, tone calm, rehearsed. "We need you to officially allocate your full pension going forward. Automatic transfer, just to streamline things." Charlie looked down. Marion buttered a roll with delicate precision. Ethan pushed the folder an inch closer. I didn't say anything. He continued, "It's really best for everyone. Less confusion. No late bills. And, frankly, Dad, it's time." I finally looked at him. Time for what? To make things official. I took a breath, slow and steady. then reached into my jacket pocket. I unfolded a document I had signed last week, revocation of co-sign permissions, withdrawal from the house mortgage, and a separation of shared assets. I actually have a document too, I said. Marion's knife paused mid-spread. Ethan stiffened. This revokes all prior financial permissions and links, effective immediately. Silence. Ethan's voice cracked. You what? I placed the paper on the table. If I'm dead weight, I said, consider this my final unload. Ethan stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Marion whispered, You've embarrassed him. Charlie looked at me, then at Ethan. He didn't say a word, but I could see the gears turning. Dinner ended without dessert. Ethan stormed upstairs. Marion followed, saying something about damage control. Charlie lingered. Grandpa, he asked, once we were alone, did you plan this? I looked at him carefully. I planned not to be blindsided again. He nodded slowly. Later that evening, I sat on the porch of my apartment with a cup of weak tea and silence thick around me. My phone rang. Ethan. I let it buzz twice before answering. Dad, why did the bank freeze the joint account I couldn't even pay the landscaper? I didn't answer. He continued, You're messing everything up. You don't know what you're doing. I hung up. I stepped outside, let the cool air hit my face, and whispered to no one in particular, no more weight to carry. My phone buzzed again. It wasn't Ethan. It was Charlie. His message read, Can I come see you alone? I opened the door to find Silas standing there with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. His hoodie was damp at the edges, eyes puffy like he hadn't slept. I didn't ask why he'd come. I just stepped aside. I can't stay there anymore, he said, voice low but steady, not even for school. I cleared a corner of the small upstairs room, moving spare jackets and a half-finished jigsaw puzzle to make space for his things. The air in the apartment shifted warmer now, thicker, with quiet understanding. I'm proud of you, I said, placing an extra pillow on the cot. But this isn't fair. He dropped his bag with a soft thud and sat on the edge of the bed, looking down. I know. That night, we had dinner at the small folding table, macaroni and peas from a dented can, and a shared slice of bread. Silas picked at his food before finally speaking. They argue all the time now. Mom blames Dad for everything. Dad says you poisoned me. I met his gaze. I gave you the truth. What you do with it is yours. Silas nodded, not angry, just tired. I'd rather live in a garage than under their ceiling. The next afternoon, I gave him a tour of the workspace beneath us. He admired the old tool rack, chuckled at my attempts at labeling. We organized some rusty carburetors and grease-stained manuals. He laughed when I slipped on oil. This place isn't big, I told him, wiping my hands, but it's honest. He grinned. That's more than I've had in years. Later that night, I heard him pacing upstairs. The old floorboards creaked like aching bones. He finally said, I got a scholarship, but now the dorm fee's on me. I didn't hesitate. I walked to my drawer, unlocked the little metal box, and handed him 2 crisp bills. Here, don't say no. It's not pity, it's partnership. He took it slowly, like it weighed more than it did. The next morning brought a letter, forwarded, a copy of a foreclosure notice addressed to Randall, 3 missed mortgage payments. The envelope trembled in my hands. I set it aside, not even needing to read the fine print. Later, as Silas sorted through a box of old cords, he pulled out something small and square, a photo, framed in wood that had faded into gray. Found this in their junk drawer, he said. Almost threw it out. It was me beside him on a little red bike, his helmet askew, his face scrunched with laughter. I wiped dust from the glass and hung it above my desk, hammering the nail into place with a deliberate care. "They buried me in that house," I said quietly, "but they forgot to lock the coffin." The morning fog clung to the ground as I walked into town, the notebook under my arm and resolve in my spine. The small bell above the law office door chimed when I stepped in. Mr. Hill looked up, his glasses slipping down his nose, age weathered but eyes still sharp. "Eldon Reese," he said, standing. "Haven't seen you in over a decade. I need to rewrite my will." I said, "Everything to Silas. No conditions, no explanations." He gestured toward the chair. "Any reason for the urgency? I've spent too long waiting for the right time to do the right thing." We went through the paperwork in silence, only broken by the scratch of a pen and Mr. Hill's calm voice reading out each clause. When it came time to sign, my hand trembled, but the line I drew was clean. I slipped a folded note across the table. "Don't notify anyone unless I pass." Outside, the wind carried the bite of early spring. I didn't head straight home. My legs led me along a path I hadn't taken in months past Randall's house. I stayed behind the hedge. No need for them to know I was there. The tree in the front yard, the one we'd planted for Elizabeth, was gone. Nothing left but a jagged stump and a few splinters sticking up like broken teeth. Even trees die when love's no longer present. Back at the apartment, the day's mail waited on the table. Among the circulars and coupons sat a familiar envelope, creased and faded. I'd mailed it to Randall years ago. An apology. One of those rare letters where the ink doesn't just carry words, but heart. It was unopened, stamped in red. "Return to sender." I placed it under Elizabeth's photo on the desk. Let the past return to itself. That evening, I pulled the revised will from the drawer and handed it to Silas. He hesitated, eyes wide. "Grandpa, I don't want your things. I want you. Then earn both." I said, "Live like you remember me whole." We toasted with water again. That had become our quiet ritual, no need for wine when truth could intoxicate more deeply. Later, he closed his laptop, face tight with worry. "Janine's spreading rumors. Says you stole from them. My friend from college says his mom heard Randall's pressing charges." I didn't flinch. Let them. Truth has legs longer than lies. I pulled a sealed envelope from a box, labeled in thick ink to be opened if they try. The next morning, Silas opened the garage to get the mail, only to find a paper flapping under a nail on the gate. Not ours. He handed it to me. A foreclosure notice. Randall's house. Bank seal at the top. 3 months unpaid. I folded it slowly, eyes scanning each line, not rushing. A breath left me, not relief, not sorrow, just air. Finally, let go. The tree wasn't the only thing uprooted. I muttered. The house follows next. The apartment was quiet that morning. Not empty, not tense, just quiet. Silas stirred milk into his coffee. I buttered toast with the back of a spoon, habit more than need. We hadn't spoken yet, but there was no pressure to. Silence doesn't always mean emptiness. I finally said, "Sometimes it's healing." Silas nodded, eyes focused on the rising steam. Mail came late that day. I knew the handwriting before I opened it. Randall's sharp, slanted script that always looked like he was in a hurry to get away from himself. The letter wasn't an apology. It was a litany. "You cost us stability, reputation, home." It said, "You should pay moral reparations for what you've done." No signature, just initials, just spite. I laid it next to the old envelope he'd returned years ago. That one held my apology. This one demanded mine. There's no door left open there. I told Silas. Just a hole in the wall I don't plan to patch. He didn't reply, didn't need to. 2 days later, I returned to Mr. Hill's office. The man didn't flinch when I handed him another request. Estate updates, I said. Emergency contacts, directive preferences, no ties, just truth. Mr. Hill adjusted his glasses, his fingers slow but sure. It's rare, to close things cleanly before they go. Most people leave messes. I've lived enough of those. I said, I won't die in one. That evening, Silas convinced me to visit the community center for board game night. I hadn't set foot in there since before Elizabeth's illness. The room smelled like peppermint and old wood. Fold-out tables creaked under the weight of puzzles and scattered laughter. I was paired with Ruthie, a sharp-eyed retiree with a habit of humming between plays. You look like a man who finally gets to be seen, she said, lining up her Scrabble tiles. I stopped waiting to be invited. I replied. I opened my own door. She smiled. About time. When we got home, I pulled Silas into the workshop. I handed him a dusty wooden nameplate Randall's from when he was a boy. It had once hung proudly on his bedroom door. I placed a blank plank beside it and started carving. 10 minutes later, I handed it to Silas. Silas, build. Don't beg. His fingers brushed the fresh edges. You sure you're not inheriting guilt? I said. You're inheriting choice. That night, as I washed up, I heard Silas's phone buzz. He stood frozen for a moment, then pressed play. The message was sharp, unmistakable. If you talk to him again, Randall's voice spat, you'll lose what's left of your name in this family. Silas looked at me. I looked back. Then it's time, I said. We build a new family name. The envelope arrived without ceremony. No knock on the door. No call ahead. Just a plain manila slip wedged between junk coupons and a senior fitness flyer. I held it in my hands for a full minute before opening it. Inside the final foreclosure confirmation, Randall's house, my former house, had officially changed hands. I sat down slowly, laying the paper on the table beside my coffee. No joy bubbled up, no anger, just a long, low breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. Sometimes, I murmured to no one. Victory sounds like a quiet sigh, not a trumpet. I opened the drawer marked closed doors and slid the document inside. One last thing filed. One less weight to carry. That afternoon, Silas stood in the doorway of the garage with his duffel bag, the zipper half open, showing textbooks and work boots. I'm taking a gap semester, he said. Work a little. Get things straight. I didn't argue. Education without dignity isn't education at all, I told him, holding out my hand. He didn't hug me. He shook my hand firm, like a man making his own promises. Later that week, the community center held its monthly poetry night. Ruthie read a poem she'd written in pencil on yellow-lined paper. Her voice cracked, but the words didn't. We're not what they left us, she read. We're what we built after. I closed my eyes. For the first time in a long while, I didn't ache when I breathed. The next morning, Silas and I dug into the hard ground behind the garage. We'd picked a spot just east of the fence line, where morning sun would hit first. The roots of the new oak sapling spread slowly as we lowered it into the earth. This won't grow big in my time, I said, wiping sweat from my brow. But it will in yours. We buried a small tin box beneath the soil, a photo of Elizabeth, an old house key, a short letter I never sent, not inheritance, intention, legacy not written in wealth, but in roots. Back inside, Silas unpacked a few things into the corner closet. No fanfare, just movement, a new rhythm, one we set, not one forced on us. The days passed quietly. No calls came from Randall, no apologies, No shouting, just absence. A silence that, for once, didn't feel like rejection. It felt like space. That silence, I said to Silas over dinner, is a gift now, not a void. That night, I flipped open my notebook. The final page was blank, waiting. I wrote slowly, pressing each letter with care. I was not wasted. I was just misplaced. On a Sunday morning, crisp with spring, we sat on the front steps, coffee warming our hands. The oak behind the garage swayed gently. It barely reached Silas's shoulder yet, but it stood straight. The wind rustled through its leaves like a whisper, not of endings, of new ground, new roots. I walked out with nothing, they said. I told Silas, watching the steam rise from his cup. But now I know nothing was exactly what I needed to begin again.